Well, we're finally at the fourth and last stage of solving the cube, where we'll permute our corners. There's no new algorithm to learn. We'll just reuse the T-perm that we used for edge permutation, but there is a final group of setup and undo setup moves. This time we'll be taking advantage of the corner swapping portion of the T-perm. Corner M is our source. That contains the piece that will be shot to our target, which is N. And corners edges, D and N, are buffers. We'll have to maintain the orientation of our corners, so whatever sticker is on the up or down face will have to be on the top when we move it into here. We'll start with corner T. First move, F2, which moves the corner from here down to here, and the sticker that was on top is now on the bottom. Now a D prime to move it over to here, then an F2 to bring it up in place. Undo for that, F2, D, F2. N is our target, no setups necessary. M is our source, we won't use M in this stage. For D, it's L2, F2, and the piece is up here, but we can't stop there because our first L2 moved one of our buffers from here down to here, so we have to restore that with another L2. Inverse of that, L2, F2, L2. Now down here to S, the easiest setup, F2. Undo, F2. G, start out with a D prime to move it over here to position S, and then the S setup move, F2. Undo, F2, D. For L, down here, D2, F2. Inverse, F2, D2. And finally for corner R, D, F2. Undo of that, F2, D prime. I'm picking up the cube where I left off last time, with the edges both oriented and permuted, and the corners oriented. Remember, on the edge permutation stage, we had an odd number of edge swaps, so we had to add a D to put these two corners back in place, which resulted in these two edges being out of place. Since we had to do an odd number of edge permutations, we'll also have to do an odd number of corner permutations here. And since there are 8 corners and I have at least that many fingers and thumbs, I just hold the corner QB once it's been solved. So let's start out. M here is our source. It's already solved. It's the green, white, orange position, and the green, white, orange piece is already there. So we have to start a new cycle right off the bat. I'll choose S because it has the easiest setup move. And I'm not holding this piece here yet, because the S that we'll do will just move this piece into our source so it can be sent off to where it belongs. And where does it belong? Orange, blue, green, which goes up here to N. SN sanding block. Put that on your 4th Roman room item. And N is green, red, white, which goes over here to D. That's the first letter of our second pair. D is red, yellow, white, which goes down here to R. DR, drum. And R is yellow, orange, white, which goes over down here to L, first letter of our third pair. Blue, orange, yellow, down to G. LG, log. And G is red, blue, yellow, which goes over here to S. That's where we started our cycle at. So now I can hold this. So that's 6 corners taken care of. And once all our other corners are done, our source piece M will be in place. That's 7. That leaves us only one corner left, which is T here. It's the green, blue, red position, and the green, blue, red piece is already in place. So it's all 8 corners taken care of. As you can see, we got a single letter left over, an odd number of T perms. Nothing special to do here. This will work itself out. Now we just have to execute. Alright, let's hurry up and finish this thing. 4th Roman room item, first image, sanding block. Letters are S and N. First is an S, setup move F2, T-perm, undo the setup. And you see our S isn't solved, we just swapped this piece with this one. The next letter was N. That's already our target, no setups. T-perm. Image on the sanding block was a drum. First letter is D, which is L2, F2, L2 setups. T-perm. Undo setups. L2, F2, L2. The second letter of that pair was an R. D, F2 setup, T-perm, undo setups. On the drum was a log. First letter L. D2, F2, T-perm, undo setup, F2, D2. Second letter of the pair was G. D prime, F2 setup, T-perm, undo the setups, F2, D. And our last letter was an S, represented by the image squirrel. Setup, T-perm, undo setup. And there we are. All done. Once again, this stage can be practiced all by itself. When you're done, all 8 of your corners will be permuted correctly, but some of them might be twisted wrong. On page 3 of the PDF file that I have a link to, there's a list of 30 cube scrambles. I suggest that you do all of those. You do the scramble, memorize, close your eyes or blindfold, and execute. If the cube's not done when you look at it, then just finish the solve with your eyes open and redo the scramble to see what you might have done wrong. It's quite possible that you memorized something incorrectly. If you realize that your memorization was right, then you goof something up on the execution. You should always recall what stage you're on. If you're, for example, doing the edge permutation portion and you do a setup move for the edge orientation, it's obviously not going to work. And there are a few things that I've done more than once. If you're going to use a blindfold instead of just closing your eyes, you have to set the cube down momentarily. Make sure you pick it up the same way. If you memorize it with one orientation and try to solve with a different, obviously it won't work. Another thing you may have noticed is that the clockwise corner twister and the T-perm both start with the same 4 moves. More than once I've tried to do one of those moves and ended up doing the other one. In the 7th and final video in this tutorial series, I'll be doing a complete solve of scramble number 5.